Hello, everybody. Today we have episode 4 for Cellar Talks, season 1, and we are already preparing ourselves for season 2. So we've got some interesting guests lined up for the next season. Today we're going to talk to Weingut Rappenhof and Elisabeth Muth. So I'll be asking her in a minute to join us. In the meanwhile, thank you everybody for watching. If you're joining with a glass of wine, tell us what you're drinking in the chat. If you have any questions like normal, you can ask them by clicking on the question mark box in the bottom. So all the questions that are entered there will be collected and we will answer them at the end of the show. So if you have any questions, we have just 1 minute before Elisabeth will be joining us. I see some people already joining that were there last time, so thank you for being back. And Weingut Rappenhof is already online. Elisabeth, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you.
Hello.
Right on time, as German as you can be, right?
Of course, always.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Actually, I'm looking very much forward to the show because we're talking about one of my favorite wine countries, Germany. And you guys got a lot of my favorite wine, Riesling. So I'm sure we have enough to talk about. But there is even a lot more interesting stuff to talk about because you have a very old history with the family winery. And you have a very interesting history yourself, or career, maybe I would say.
Yeah.
So thank you for making some time. For the audience, we're also going to taste one of the wines from Weingut Rappenhof later, so stay tuned for that. But maybe we can start with a small introduction from your side, Elisabeth. So tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came into the winemaking business.
First of all, thank you very much. I'm also very excited to be here with you. And so I'm Elisabeth from Weingut Rappenhof, co-owner of Weingut Rappenhof. It's a family-based, more than 400-year-old winery in the center of Rheinhessen at the River Rhine. So right now it's run by my dad, who's generation 12, and me, generation 13. And yeah, as you said, it's I did not do the very classy way of getting into my family's business. So at the age of 19, I could not imagine being in Alzey, like this very small town where we are located, for the rest of my life. So I decided to do something differently. And lucky me, my parents gave me the chance to do that. So I studied architecture and studied architecture first. And after that, I went to Munich to work for almost 4 years. And yeah, after that time, I came back. So it was almost 10 years I was away from the winery, from the family. And at the age of 29, in 2018, I came back and started 100%. So gave up Munich, moved into this very tiny, small town of Alzey, gave up the mountains, the lakes and everything, and came back to the vineyards and doing something completely different. No architecture anymore, but only making wine.
Interesting. So as you said, the winery is run by your father and you and responsible for the winery. You also said that it's not something that you imagined when you were younger because, you had a different career in mind. Sometimes things change, and also going from a small village to a bigger city, you get a lot of new experience, obviously. But you decided and opted to go back, and now you are how many years back in the winery?
I'm back since summer 2018, so it's 2.5 years now. And the vintage 2018 was my first vintage. So came here and started 100%. So it was, I think, July or so when I started, and then I had 2 months to understand a little, and then I was harvested right away So that was quite intense.
Can you tell us a little bit on how that went? Because you already told us that it's not a classical way of going into making wine as a winemaker. Of course, you learned a lot already when you were younger, being in the winery, etc. But you had to do some catching up, obviously, because, well, going and studying architecture doesn't teach you a lot about wine, unfortunately. But you managed to pick up again. So how did you do that? I mean, a lot of people go to school, wine school, and learn there. But you have a little bit of a different way of doing that in the past 2 years.
Yeah, I have to say that, of course, I did learn a lot of things when I was younger. So in our family, we always had to work like during our free time. So when we were on holiday, our parents made us understand actually the whole business and what they did and where everything comes from. So we had to work as well. So for sure, during harvest, we had to go harvest. And then when there was nothing else to do, for sure, they found some way to keep us working on something, maybe not like only labeling or anything, things like that. So I did get a lot of things when I was younger, and also during my studies, and also even during my time in Munich. I joined a lot of wine fairs. So my dad used to travel a lot. So we have quite a big export part in our winery, especially quite like far east. So we're going to Asia a lot. So my dad and I, we went to a lot of different wine fairs. So for like the tasting part and for my tongue, I had a lot of experience, even when not studying making wine or anything professional. But of course, all the technical part and that stuff I had to learn when I came back, and I had to learn very quickly. So thank God I'm very curious in general. So I'm asking a lot. What helps? Yeah, definitely. And what is important in that case. So I asked everybody and everyone that I could find, especially, I mean, it's my dad and me and my mom, but we also have a great team that we work with. Some of our team members are in the winery since 30 years, so they know a lot. They know every vineyard with every little stone and everything. So I asked them anything. I would walk with them the whole day and asking questions and questions. And then, of course, I'm happy to have winemaker friends. So I borrowed all that book from Geisenheim University, and I read a lot of articles online. And after that, of course, I had more questions, so I had to find people who could give me these answers. And this is how it went. And then, of course, a lot of things by trial and error. So I tried a lot of things during first harvest. Not everything went well, I have to say, but okay. And that's how you learn
That's
it.
okay. I mean, there's always, like you said, a lot of people that know in the company that know a lot about every vineyard, every piece of the vineyard, every effect of climate, etc., etc. So even if you sort of make a mistake, which is not that bad, I mean, that happens, there's people to back you up and help you in that aspect.
Yeah, I was not alone during the whole process. So that was also, like, for me, very easy. So I could go, like, take risks because I knew I would not fall too low. So it was easy for me to to experiment maybe a little. And I thankfully I got the chance from my parents, or from my dad especially, who said, go for it, try whatever you want, and we'll see how it turns out. And if it's nice, we keep on doing that. If not, maybe you have to find another way. But actually, that's how it went. And still, I'm learning. And this vintage is completely different. Like the last one, 2020, was very different to 2019, and also 2019 was different to 2018. So I have 3 different vineyards, vintages, which are very, very differently. And I'm still learning, of course. But I think even in 10 or 20 years, I'm still learning. So
that doesn't stop. I mean, when I was in Germany last summer, some of the winemakers I talked to, also obviously a lot of it's family companies. So a lot of them, when I talked to them, they were working besides their parents for already maybe 10 years before they got a chance to take over. So they had, let's say, a longer period. But even then, you cannot catch up with experience that is 40 years old. I mean, like I said, every vintage is different. Every effect that there is on a vintage is different. The nature develops itself, the climate changes. So that will never stop. So in that aspect, okay, you're never really ready. But I think in 2 years you managed to do a good job to really catch up and now be very responsible, have a responsible role in the winery. Yeah, yeah, good. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the region first. So I should not forget that you about the history of the winery as well. That you are a very old winery. So the vineyards have been in the family for a long time. What is the age of the vineyards that you have, and the age of the winery in total? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. So the winery was founded in 1604. But at that time, for sure, it was not only wine, it was agriculture, and we had horses as well. So this is also the name comes from. Rappenhof means yard of black horses. So, and then after a while, everything else was left by side. So it's only the winery which is left. And so the whole family is actually in there 100%. And yeah, so we, as every winery during like maybe the last few hundred years, we went through different processes. So my great grandfather, he was one of the first people in Rheinhessen who had these biodynamical ideas. So he was working a lot with nature and very near nature. And then my grandfather, he was a little more into like he was the one actually who brought us to VDP. So he was maybe a little more market orientated. And so right now I'm still finding my way of.
You have your own profile and your own things, what you think that are interesting and important, and everybody has his own ideas.
You need both, right? So you cannot like do one without the other. But it's always like the challenge is to find a good. Or like a good mix of all. So this is
I agree.
Yeah, so right now we do mostly Riesling, so this is our main field, and then actually mostly in the most cases it's dry wine. And
let me show the audience a quick map. So for those people that are not so familiar in Germany, this is the German wine regions. Obviously, we look at Rheinhessen, so the purple ones, and then we have this area where you guys are mainly located. So there's a couple of different important vineyards in the area. You see in the left bottom, you see Alzheim, where the winery is located, right? Yes. So this area, not a lot of people know. Let's say in Germany, it's a famous area. So Rheinhessen is a famous production area, but also the Rote Hang is a very famous area with all the vineyards there, of which you own some. But for some people, that might not be so familiar. So also people that don't come from Germany or don't have that much of a, let's say, elaborate experience with Riesling, because you have Riesling, but it's in a lot of different regions. But if we talk about this, where are the vineyards located? Mainly in Rheinhessen, which area?
So like we are, like our vineyards are actually all on the River Rhine, what you can see here in light gray. So this is supposed like a picture of the River Rhine. And then so for us, the vineyards in Nierstein, it's Pettental and Ölberg, our GG sites. They are the most northern vineyards.
This one.
So I think it's here, yeah, it's I wanted to point with my finger, but it doesn't work.
That's not possible. No. It's in the up, so it's along the river. So you see these gray areas, which is the vineyards areas, obviously, and they take effect from the river. So that's also, of course, why they are located there. Why is it very important that you guys, that the vineyards and areas are close to the river and let's say the hillsides next to the river?
So what is one of the most important things about the Rote Hang is, of course, on one point, that they are near the River Rhine, but it's also the steepness. So they are really, really steep. So Pettental, I think, is one of the deepest areas over there with steepness of up to 70%. So it's, yeah, that's
You can see a little bit on this picture, but
yeah.
See the people working in the vineyard, but that's what the process is, the steepness, and that's where the grapes benefit from, basically.
Exactly. So it's the steepness. So they benefit from a very long sun hour, actually. So it's like you can imagine, as steep as the steeper the vineyard is, the more sun they get. The more sun they get during the day. And Pettental is a vineyard which is southeast orientated. So you get sun in the morning and then during the day all over. And so they are actually sun-kissed the whole day, which is pretty cool. But of course, in terms of climate change, also something that we have to deal with, how we can save our grapes of not being sunburned or anything. So we have to think about leaf management and things like this. But
see, here's the hilly sides where also a lot of the vineyards are situated. So how many different vineyards do you have in total?
I don't even know. So like maybe 70 or so, or 80.
But they're divided in different qualifications,
yeah,
right?
sure. So we have from the most southern to the most northern vineyard, it's around 15 kilometers. So it's also pretty challenging during harvest with a tractor, and you cannot go very fast. So it takes a lot of time for us to go to Nierstein and take our grapes home. But it's definitely worth it. So it's one of our most important sites. And then we have actually vineyards all from Nierstein up to south in every other. So this is Oppenheim, what you can see right now. We have also a GG site over there. It's called Herrenberg. And it's right next to this impressive old Gothic church. It's pretty nice to work there, actually, and have this atmosphere around. And then we have another, like a few more in Dienheim. It's also the wine that we will taste.
Yeah.
Here. It comes from Dienheim, and then there are some smaller towns next to Dienheim, and then you come to Alzheim, where also the winery is located. And actually here are most of our vineyards. And the most interesting thing about Alzheim is that we never had a land consolidation. So we have very, very original vineyards, so and also very small ones. So sometimes they are only like four rows or so. This is the one vineyard, and then maybe
that's why you said maybe we have 70 vineyards. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to count them if they're really that fragmented.
Some of them are pretty small, and some of them like maybe only 500 square meters, but yeah, this.
But do you use these small parcels also in special selections? What you see is that a lot of wineries look at the terroir and then they see a difference even in smaller parcels in a vineyard or in an area, and then they say, okay, this is looking at that. Some grapes might be ripe quicker, etc., or the vines may be all older in that part. So do you in your selection take that into account?
Definitely. Yeah, we have that effect as well. Sometimes in one vineyard, we have to harvest 4 or 5 different times because we have completely different ripening process or ripening. So that's definitely within one vineyard, you can even see a difference. And of course, if one is a little, in Alzheim, we have a lot of terraces, like really old Löss terraces. And then if the one terrace is a little more like more southern or a little more northern or a little, I don't know, orientated in another direction, so it gets more wind or so, you have other ripening processes, and then the timing is different. And as we know, timing is all in making wine. You definitely can deal with these products very differently, and then we put them in different tanks as well, or different barrels, and they sometimes develop very, very differently as well, even if they come from the same vineyard.
Yeah, and then in that case, that means in the weeks around harvest, you on a daily basis, you have to walk around and actually inspect visually what's happening. So your whole day is basically filled with going through all these parts of the vineyard to see what's happening and then take action when it's needed.
Exactly. Sometimes this is like half a day is only checking grapes. So, and as the vineyards are located on so many different spots, it's also a lot of like driving and checking and going back again and next day again. And during really hot periods, sometimes the grapes they add up to 2 degrees a day. So, and you want to have like the perfect timing. So you have to check very, very focused and very, very often.
Yeah. So 85%, if I read correct, of your production is Riesling, right?
Yeah, maybe a little less.
More or less.
Yeah, like 80% around that. Yeah. And then we also have Pinots, like Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, Chardonnay we do, and Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
But this is, what you can see here is Merlot. So
Merlot, even less.
We have a very, very small vineyard, really small with Merlot. It's like 1,000 liters a year.
This personal consumption, well, 1,000 liters is still a lot, but
it's very, very small. Actually, it's quite fun to have like to experiment a little and to see also how this develops. And yeah, so.
Well, it brings us to a question. Well, this one I'm going to pick out and not wait until the end because it's I think it's a topic that is very hot at the moment, the climate change. Is this also one of the reasons why you're now experimenting? Because you want to see what the effect is? Certain grapes, well, I would say 10 years ago, you would not even try to grow them in the area. And maybe now you're testing to see what the effect is. Is that correct? Or is this, I mean, the climate change obviously has an impact on all the vines that you have in the area.
Definitely. I think it's something you have to do because you never know how the future is going to be with all the grapes. So Riesling is not the easiest grape variety. It's very sensitive, and the hotter it gets and the less water we have during summer time, we have to find other ways to protect our quality and to like still keep the quality of the grapes. So one point is definitely the leaf management. So the timing here is also very important. You don't want to be too late because otherwise all the grapes they don't have anything like that provides them from the sun, so they get sunburn.
No protection. Yeah.
And I know that like maybe even my grandfather, so they did very, very sharp leaf management. They took away a lot of
they
leaves.
needed all this sun, the little bit of sun that there was. They needed to maximize on this potential. But you, it's the other way around. You try to protect more or less the grapes.
It the way around, and this is something that we tried very early already. So we sometimes we did in one vineyard we had 5 rows on both sides, 5 rows on one side, 5 on the other, and then figured out which is the best. And then so this is actually the also trial and error and see what is best for our grapes, also for our sites. So it's not the same, even like if you have vineyards with all the same grape variety, they develop differently on different in different locations. So it's always, you have to find the perfect way of dealing with the grape on exactly this place.
Yeah, I agree. And also last summer, I talked to a young winemaker, and he said, well, people are perceiving these years where we're in right now as the golden age for winemakers in Germany. If you're now younger and you're coming into the winery, you have let's say a lot of benefit from the climates as well. On the other hand, it goes very quick, so nobody knows how long that's going to take. But if you look back, let's say 20 years ago, you had a lot of years vintages where the harvest didn't even ripen, and especially in the Mosel it's even worse, obviously, because they're up north more. But in Rheinhessen you had the same problem that your father or your grandfather, and even longer ago as well, they had vintages that just didn't ripe because there was not enough sun. So
I think it's a chance as well. I mean, especially for example also for red wines. We are able to produce pretty good red wines nowadays, which we're not able in former times. But also it's challenging, and you have to find a proper way for exactly your circumstances.
Yeah, and you told us that you have a family company with a lot of people helping you out. But next to that, there's even another important mitarbeiter in the company. So this is tell us a little bit about who this is.
Yeah, this is actually like the main employer of the of the winery. So, but maybe maybe he's the one who is most important right
Mm-hmm.
now. We got him. That its name is Hugo. So it's a Deutsch Kurzhaar, German short hair
Mm-hmm.
pointer, and we got him last year in April. So he's almost 1 year old, and actually it always been my dream to have a dog again. So we always had dogs, like my grandparents had dogs, and we'd had a dog when I was small. But yeah, I moved to Munich, and of course I was not able to have a dog over there. And then when I came back, that was the first thing I said, I need to have a dog again. So now we got Hugo, and it's
And people that know you already, they know that is not Hugo, but it's Hugo the hunter.
it's Hugo the hunter, yes.
So he chases rabbits. So what does he do?
He does change whatever he can get, mostly round things. He loves everything round. He loves, even if it's not a ball or anything, it's just
Grapes as well.
grapes, yes, as well. And yeah, so it's quite exciting with him. Thankfully, he's really, really nice. So everybody likes him, but he's also, yeah, he's very active. He's a more of an active dog so on this picture, he's pretty like, yeah, charming, I would say.
Yeah,
So
but he's not always like this. He's
so
also running
actually, he's
around and being very active.
running around, destroying things, hunting stuff. So my mom is taking care of him right now because
Mhm.
otherwise I would not be able to sit here.
He would disturb the show.
He would disturb, yeah, and he would
Ah,
be, yeah.
well, it's nice to have him still here in the picture then.
No, he's really he's like um a lot of things changed since we have him. He's really like a big part of the family, but I think it's pretty nice. As I grew up with the animals, I think it's a very, very nice thing to have like a family dog, and also in the winery it's also pretty
I
nice.
agree. There's always life when the dog
Yeah,
is walking around.
definitely.
So, well, this is not a full picture, but here you see you working in the vineyards. And what I've also noticed, I would like to point out for the people who are not following you yet, that last harvest, you did a nice series of stories on Instagram for, I think, with VDP together.
Yes, I was for VDP. Yes, I was a
Yeah.
takeover, Instagram takeover of VDP channel. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really nice for the people who didn't see it, and of course everybody should start following Rappenhof after this session. But it's really nice to see you're walking us through the harvest, basically, and through the vineyard. So a nice series of videos. So I hope you keep on doing that also in the future. Maybe not with VDP or with VDP, but it's really a nice addition because I think a lot of people use Instagram to learn also about winemaking, wine growing, etc. So this is also obviously why we have these shows. But it was very pleased to see that you actually really spend time to explain also to people how the wine becomes, how the wine goes in the bottle, and in the end ends on in the glass. It's not something that grows on the tree and is instantly wine. There's more to do to get
Yeah,
in there.
so for us, some things are just very normal. So it's our day life, but we sometimes forget that for people who are not in the wine business or who just like to drink wine and never have been part of the process of producing wine, to like they don't even have any idea of how this works. And so sometimes you just have to think of like explaining the basics. So I think that on that day, I think we were harvesting Cabinet, Riesling Cabinet in
Mm-hmm.
Alsace, in one of our older vineyards, which is pretty cool as well. So it was a good coincidence on that day. But yeah, sometimes I have to remember to like show
Yeah.
base, not be too technical, but I'm working on that very focused.
Very good. Okay. About you were saying cabinet, so that's already triggered me. You sent me some wines I already reviewed one, but of course there's more that are going to come. You have the great Chardonnay, which obviously is not something people would think of straight away with a German winery, but more and more winemakers in Germany are growing the Chardonnay grape. So and actually to make very good wine. So I was really impressed with that. But like we said, it's mainly a Riesling compared to other regions like mostly the Mosel. It's dry Riesling. You have Cabinet, for example, but not really. You don't have the Spätlese, Auslese, etc. Correct?
We do.
Or maybe for.
But it's not not our main topic. So
yeah.
So we do that when we always say when nature gives us the chance. We try to do Spätlese, Auslese, sometimes even BA or TBA.
Yeah.
But of course, not every year. It's possible.
Is it difficult because you have to think in advance? Am I going to wait and leave the grapes? And well, you never have really the guarantee that it's going to turn out how you want it to be.
So the thing is, what you have to think of is if you can risk on losing a lot of grapes because of rain. So if it rains, they might rot and fall down. Yeah. Or they might just rot, which is also not nice, or they might be full of water, which is also not nice. So rain is a really big problem when you want to do another wine. And then another thing is, and this was actually the problem last year. So I was planning on doing an Auslese last year, but it didn't work because the acidity just was not good anymore. So the grapes, they were really ripe, the Axel was okay, but the acidity was really, really low. And
but the payoff, the balance between the two, which makes it so special and unique, it was not there at that moment.
And you need, for a noble sweet wine, this is a wine that you want to keep for ages, hopefully.
Yeah,
or
it needs the acidity, otherwise it will not last for.
Exactly, that's one of the biggest goals in doing a sweet. I mean, sweet wine is not only just letting the grapes ripe very, very much. It's definitely more than that, and you need acidity to be pretty good. So unfortunately, there's no Auslese in 2020, but. Maybe we'll have.
But it's interesting because we have also since quite some time in some areas in Germany we have ice wine now, but also for that you need to. Everybody wants it at the moment. I mean, for years it was not that interesting. You can even get a lot of bottles from the 70s or 80s now on auctions because well, there was a lot of ice wine made, but nobody bought it at that point. Now it's becoming really hot. Everybody wants it, but the weather or the climate doesn't really allow us to do that successfully every year. You see some wineries also in the area in Rheinhessen that took a chance and this year harvested to make some ice wine. But that's even, I can imagine it's even more difficult because you have to really wait, and then you have this very small window where you can have to risk and win or lose, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, we did that as well in former times. We did ice wine, but I don't know, maybe last time 1990 or so. I don't know, long ago. So for us, it's not a big theme anymore. Even though you're right, people keep asking, but it's more maybe in Asia, it's still a thing.
Well, that brings me to another question. You talked about export, and it's for you guys, it's an important part of the business that you're doing. Asia is an important region still. A lot of people in Asia buy the German sweet wines. So in that perspective, but also the dry ones, they're very, let's say, popular. But I think the picture that we used in the announcement, I think, was for Hong Kong when you were there. I don't know if you recall which picture it was, but I think it was taken in the.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what do you guys sell basically in the export business? Which wines are popular for export at the moment?
So I would say it's 90% Riesling still. And then this changed a little. So I remember the first fairs that I did. It was a lot of the sweet wines that were asked mostly, like Auslese, Spätlese. Even though we don't produce them every year, we always what we do is keep wines from older vintages, like keep them in our cellar, don't put them for sale, don't offer
It's a
them.
good thing because not everybody does it, but if you want them, you need to keep them.
Yeah, exactly. And then some of the wines, they just need time to develop. And if you want them to be on the perfect, like in the perfect timing and in the perfect condition to sell or to show customers, you have to wait for a while. So I'm very happy that like my dad and my grandfather, they decided to do things like that. So we still have some pretty interesting things like TBAs, BAs, Auslese, also from nice sides like Pettental or so. And so these are wines which have been really, really interesting for the Asian market. But since some years, it's more like also the basic wines, like Gutswein, for example. Riesling Gutswein is the main thing. GG is also highly asked. And
but it's interesting because you said the goods wine, but a lot of people, maybe I don't know about Germany, but in Holland, for example, the thing is, if you create these categories, people start to think in a certain way. So you have these levels, so people see a pyramid and they see the bottom and they're like, okay, they look at the price, they see the differences in the prices, and then they'll go like, okay, maybe that's not really a good wine. But you cannot say that because, especially in Germany, the overall quality is very high. So a good wine or Ortswein is a very good wine. And I think maybe I can only assume that in other countries, people are also more judging German wine as a quality product. And for that reason, a good wine is a German wine and therefore stands also for good quality.
Definitely. So it's, of course, people sometimes just see the price and then they see the bottle, which is pretty nice with the GG sign on the bottle, everything. But we always try to educate our customers that it's the pyramid is not the quality thing; it's more like the origin thing, which changes. So for the GG,
the typicality of the vineyard. This is what you want to find back in the wine. So what is the typical expression for this vineyard? And that can be something you like, and it can be something you don't like. So one vineyard compared to the other can be very different, although it's the same grape. And people have a personal preference, which they sometimes don't really know. They think Riesling, and then that's it. But obviously, there's much more to it then. Yeah.
Even like even only in our winery, we have 3 different kind of terroir. We have 3 different kinds of soils. So we have red slate in Nierstein, in Oppenheim we have limestone, and in Alzheim we have löss. And then if you produce a Riesling from all these 3 different areas, they taste and turn out completely differently. Yeah. And they all come from one cellar, from one winemaker, and
same year,
same style, same year, same variety, sometimes even planted in the same year, so not a difference in the
well, you're very lucky that you have these terroir differences as well as soil differences, because well, not everybody has it. But it's let's taste something, because you already poured a glass, but I'll show to the people what we're drinking today. So today we're having, you can explain because you're the winemaker here, so tell us what we're drinking.
So we are drinking VDP Ortswein, so which is the second classification level on the pyramid. So the idea about Ortswein is to create a wine which is terroir orientated, so which is like shows the typical terroir of this certain town or city or whatever. So in our case, it's a town called Dienheim, which is I would say quite in the middle between Alzheim and Nierstein. And the terroir that we have here, or the soil that we have here, is it's löss, but with a quite high influence of limestone, which I think is very, very interesting, because you have actually the best of both worlds. So from the löss part, you have like a fruity flavor, which is typical, of course, for Rheinhessen Riesling. But on the other side, you also have the strength and the power of limestone, which get from this kind of stony soil. And I think the combination makes it very, very special. And yeah, that's actually what I mean.
I think there was when you smell, you obviously have the fruity flavors. Cheers. But it's
Yeah,
more also, like you said, it's a combination because you also really taste the body in the wine. And sometimes, especially with a dry Riesling, that's really not the goal. I mean, there's the acidity, there's the freshness, there's the crispness, but body is not always something you get. I mean, with the soils and the differences that you have, you can taste with this one. If I compare it to other ones that I already tasted from you guys and that I tasted in Rheinhessen, it's really a good, well-structured wine.
yeah, and I mean, you for the Ortswein, you don't you want it to be a little more complex, of course, than the Gutswein. It's not a like a everyday drinking wine. Maybe if you're lucky, you can do it, but
Yeah.
so it's more like for maybe also for like combination with some certain food or also for a special occasion, depending on which kind of wine it is. And but it's not as complicated as a GG maybe. So sometimes a GG, it's like you don't just want to pour it and drink it. You just you want to think about it. You want to talk about it. You want to discuss it. You want to understand it. Maybe open the bottle, drink a glass, open the next day, drink another glass, and want to experience the wine. And for Ortswein, I think it's the perfect mix of like both. So it's still a wine that you can enjoy and drink easily, but it's a lot more complex than just a regular Gutswein, and it brings a lot more in this origin thing, like where the wine comes from, and that it really shows where its roots stand.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very, very important thing in general in making wine. Wine should always be like a fingerprint of its origin.
Yeah, I agree, and I think you're very successful in this. And also, one of the questions that came up, if we talk about Riesling, widely popular in Germany. I think it's grown in every major wine region, well, some more and some less, but it's in every wine region you have Riesling. There's a lot of differences still with with Riesling, even within the regions you have obviously the different types and styles of Riesling. What would you say? You already told us a little bit. Well, what is, let's say, a typical Rheinhessen, if you can say, Rheinhessen Riesling, if you compare it to Mosel or you compare it to maybe Pfalz, let's say that.
This is a really, really hard question, and
I know.
actually ask that. I can understand, because why would someone buy a Rheinhessen Riesling and not one from Pfalz or from Rheingau? And I think it's not like you cannot answer in one sentence, because Rheinhessen is very like what's typical for Rheinhessen is the variety.
The three soils you already mentioned in your own
Soils,
winery.
right. In soils, yeah, and I mean.
Yeah.
Winery, we have 3 different ones. Now you can imagine Rheinhessen is the biggest wine growing region. You have so many different soils. Even as I mentioned before, in our like sometimes even in one vineyard you have different tastes of, and the Riesling develops differently. So this is something which is very typical for Rheinhessen, that you have a lot of very, very different Rieslings that only come from where they grow. So it's not a winemaker, it's not the climate or anything. It's just the soil and the terroir that makes the Riesling so different.
So maybe people that ask that question should try to experience more Riesling from different soils to start with. I mean, there's more than soils, but soils is a big influence, obviously. And then you can also learn what is more your preference and what's maybe something that you don't really like. So with you guys, it's easy. You have 3 different ones. So if they go to your winery, they can buy 3 different soils.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Like that. I like that actually mostly on Riesling, because Riesling is so sensitive, and it can, like, on one thing you have on one side you have terroir, but also every vintage is different, and you can rather it works as a dry wine. It's also really nice as a light cabernet or so, and there are beautiful Auslese or Bernauslese or something, which are also amazing. So Riesling is like so
versatile.
Yeah, which is pretty cool.
I agree. So, always important question for people that now want to try the wine because they're very enthusiastic after this show, obviously. What is some countries where the wines are available? Obviously, it depends on the volume and it depends on the vintage and the volume, plus the different, let's say, styles that you have and the different your assortment. But are there some countries where people can buy them, and what's your main focus? Let's put it like that.
So yeah, as I said before, we have been pretty concentrated on Southeast Asia. So, but I suppose this is maybe not the main.
Most people in this call are from Italy, Holland, Germany, UK, France, and Europe, I would say. So I don't know if any of these countries is Germany,
Yeah.
obviously, but
Of course, most is we sell most of the wine which we don't export to Asia in Germany. And then we have Poland, where we sell wine to. Then we have Denmark, and we have Norway. We have a small a small customer in Holland as well, and Canada. But also this is not so interesting.
It's still quite spread out. My answer always also is to people, if they ask this, you can just order. With a lot of wine stores are in Germany, you can just order them and they will ship it to Holland. People think it's really expensive, but 9 times out of 10 it's not that bad. You buy a couple of wines from a German wine store and then they will send it to Holland or to Italy or to the UK. So
it's not that expensive. That's right.
It's available.
We also send sometimes when we have customers in like in a country that we don't sell wine to, we are also able to send the wine directly from the winery, which is not that expensive. Of course, it depends on the country, but it's still happening quite often and working well.
Maybe recurring customers that have been also at the winery to visit you, and then obviously became a fan, and they know what you have, what you sell, and then it's easy to come back directly and to order with you guys. So yeah,
always working. So coming here to wine, that's always the best way actually to experience the product.
Good. So let's go to the questions. We already got some questions in. I want to start with the question from our last guest, James. James is in wine education. He created infographics, wine maps to teach people the difficulties of wine regions, especially France, which is a very complex country. And if you want to learn about the different regions, it's not easy. So I asked him the question, as I always do. Do you have a question for our next guest, Elisabeth? And you wanted to know, especially because you have such a long history with the family winery, is it heavy for you? Sometimes it might even feel as a burden to have this legacy, or do you really see excitement to try new things, and do you have the opportunity to do that? I think you already told us a little bit about the opportunity, but
I think it might have been daunting a little if I would have come back at the age of 19 when I left school. But as I came back as like an adult at the age of 29, and knowing exactly what would happen or what I would have to deal with, I mean, like maybe in 95% of the cases, it was actually more the excitement that was a lot bigger. And of course, I'm also pretty lucky that my dad or my parents are very, very open. They like let me experience everything that I want to try out, and that I can like find my own way to do. But in this case, I have to say it's 100% excitement, and it's no pressure at all.
That's good. That's good. Also, another question that came in via your channel is Zect. So Zect question mark, I guess. So maybe you've been talking to people about it, or I don't know what the question is about. Probably when you're gonna have Zect.
Yeah, actually, I was also quite surprised because I don't know, but I think that sect definitely is a big theme right now. So it's German sect is like one thing which is like so like
Booming.
going right now. And we do sect as well. We have different kinds of sect because we also saw that like this is something which is working pretty well also with our grapes, with our products. And what I did last year, we actually harvested grapes for a sect with a very long yeast storage. So gonna be a few more years until we can try it. But I'm really excited. This is one of the
working on it.
Yeah, I really wanted to do that for so long. So yeah, we have to wait for another, I don't know, like at least 3-4 years or so, and then we'll see. It's a 100% Chardonnay sect, and yeah, it's still in these kind of barrels that we can just see on the picture. So yeah, I think it's gonna be
waiting and resting and waiting to be ready to continue in the process. It's for the people that are not from Germany, some of them might not know what Sekt is, but it's basically the German sparkling wine.
Exactly, yeah.
So you don't have champagne, but you have Sekt.
But it's the same method actually.
Yeah. The same, yeah.
So it's sparkling wine, and it's called Sekt in Germany, but yeah, had been a thing in the past. So a few hundred years ago, everybody was drinking German Sekt instead of other things. But we, I don't know, lost some fans during the last century, I would say.
Well, at some point, Riesling was more expensive than Burgundy wine. So that's also true. So I can imagine that the Sekt was also very popular then.
Yeah, Germans have to really work on like going back to what German wine and Sekt had been like 100 years ago. But we are all that, and I think like especially the young generation is doing a pretty good job on like making the German wine interesting and big again.
I agree. So somebody asked, which wine should we choose to pair with kibbeling? So that's typical Dutch, but let's say fish and chips without the chips, fried battered fish. We were arguing about that because we didn't know, but we found out that Riesling works well.
Riesling is always, I think it's for most of the dishes, you can find the perfect Riesling. So because it's actually exactly what I said before, Riesling works in a dry way. It works dry and like really like, I don't know, complex and deep, but also dry and light. It works with high acidity. It works with residual sugar. It works as a very sweet old aged wine, maybe with some petrol, maybe with, I don't know, it's as it is so in so many different ways available. I think I would definitely take a Riesling, maybe with some acidity, maybe with some sweetness. So maybe even the Diener Riesling would not be the worst choice for this kind of dish.
Good. Then some questions that came in. Why are you doing mostly dry wines and not predicaat? Well, we talked a little bit about it. Maybe you want to add something to that question?
I think it's just also maybe like a personal taste that is like we all like in our winery, we like dry wines, and I think that the aromas, they show a lot. You can show them a lot, or you can like discover a lot more in a dry wine maybe than in a wine where you only have sweetness.
Yeah.
Not also
so the pureness basically what you want to show,
right? And also not every vineyard you can like do a really nice sweet wine out of. So what we usually choose is Pettental or Ölberg or Herrenberg. So the ones which bring a very certain aroma and a certain specialty out. So you always have to make a decision, either more GG or an also. So
it's one or the other. Nature gives you what it has in store.
It depends on the yields as well. For example, 2019 we had really small yields, so we were happy to have even a little dry. So we don't just focus on anything else. But yeah, we still do, when nature gives us a chance, we still do some Prädikatswein, and a cabinet or something like that we almost have every year. So that's cool. This one.
Okay, another question. Which stereotype about German wines and a winery would you like to see changed or maybe further strengthened? Uh, well, she loves Riesling, so it's a believer. We don't have to argue with her, but the question is a good question, I think. We already talked a little bit about it. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, it was the best of the best. Then a lot of things happened. Now it's becoming more popular. What is there to be changed or enhanced, maybe?
I think it's the German winemakers maybe have focused on export, as we also did pretty much, and we sometimes lost the people in our own country. So what you can see that the Germans, they import wines like crazy. They drink a lot of wines from other countries, but not a lot of German wine, which is pretty sad. And I think we have to start here first, so like educate our own people and show which wines we can produce and how cool a German wine is. And so this is one of the main things that like my generation needs to do, like to make people buy more high quality wines and not the Tetra Pak wines at discount.
I agree. Taste the best stuff and spend a little bit more and really taste what you already said, what the terroir, what the soil, what the vineyards have to offer, and then you see the differences even within one grape variety that there are in a country like Germany, which is very big with a lot of different regions. Another question is, if you wouldn't have a winery in Rheinhessen, which area would your favorite area to be to make wine? That's a good one, I think.
That's a nice question. So I have to say, without lying, I'm happiest here in Rheinhessen. I couldn't think of anything better. But if I had to choose one, I would choose Champagne. Champagne. To live in Champagne and do the same thing there, but I think that would be a big problem for my liver. So maybe
you want to be your biggest customer.
Yeah, right. I would definitely.
Well, it's a nice, very different, but I can imagine that you don't want to go to some place that is pretty similar or a little different. It's totally different. So that I think is a good choice.
Exactly, yeah.
And you can learn a lot from those areas as well. I know that a lot of winemakers even did internships, not even maybe in Champagne, but in Burgundy, for example, to really experience the different styles of winemaking and the French style of winemaking. I think we'll do one more question. And that, I think, is a combination. First question was, isn't Rheinhessen too southern for Riesling to bring out the best of in the grapes? And the other one is, will climate change push Riesling further north to a cooler climate? So I think it goes a little bit hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Rheinhessen still has the perfect conditions still, but only if we rethink of the way of dealing with the grape variety. So as you explaining before, leaf management will be a thing in the future more than right now. So like we have to like maybe don't cut too sharp and don't take too many leaves off, and like the timing is pretty important as well. And I think also the like finding the perfect location for your Riesling is also a thing. So maybe you would not choose this 100% south orientated hillside anymore. Maybe you choose a like a more, I don't know, northwest part, maybe a little windy or anything. So I think
and then you can choose from the other grape varieties and play around a little bit with that, obviously. And like I said, Chardonnay a couple of years ago in Germany wasn't a team, but now almost every winery that I visited, not in the Mosel, so in the Mosel not really yet, but the other ones, they all have a Chardonnay in their assortment now these days, or a Weissburgunder at least.
About the Chardonnay, and actually, so my grandfather, he was like a person who experimented very much with grape varieties. This is also the reason why we have Merlot and why we had Merlot very early. But he was actually the one who planted the first Chardonnay vineyard in Rheinhessen. And so we have the oldest Chardonnay, which is only 4 rows. And the Chardonnay that you tasted, the Alsace Chardonnay from this vineyard. And I remember
how old are these vines?
it was planted in early 80s, I think like 82 or 83 or so.
Yeah, really
Like,
really old. Yeah.
so at that time, Chardonnay was not officially like allowed in Rheinhessen, so it was Landwein, land wine, so no
Of
quality.
course. Yeah.
And I remember that I was not living, I was not alive at that time, so I was not even planned. But so from what he said or from what he told me is that at that time you were not allowed to harvest when you wanted to. So there was like an official start, and then when harvest started, you were allowed to harvest. And this vineyard was always very, very ripe, so he always was in trouble with like finding the right timing. And then what he did is like he fermented them already at that time in barrique barrels that he brought from France. So he was a big fan of France and of French wines, and had a lot of French friends. So yeah, he did a lot of things actually that are pretty like right now with like on time right now. So people like to do that as well. And then he was pretty early with these kind of things, which is quite cool. So I'm trying to go back to that as well. So, oops, sorry. Also putting my Chardonnay back into like wooden barrels, and we didn't do that before. Also, this vineyard was not very, very special for us before, but as I found this out, is of course I wanted to like do something.
Bring it back to life.
Exactly, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, but
so,
you're right, and I agree. The grape varieties like Pinot Blanc and Chardonnay, they're like getting more.
Hugo is making his guest appearance now. I guess I hear him in the background. Is it correct?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So, your favorite champagne or Zect or wine? That was a question that just popped up, and then we'll close it off because we are running out of time. But that's a good question.
That's a good question.
So it can be a wine. It doesn't need to be a sparkling then.
Okay, so even this is pretty hard to answer.
It's more difficult.
There has been a wine that I really, really liked a lot. It's a Rheinhessen wine, actually. It's from one of our colleagues, also VDP, from Battenfeld, Spanier.
Yeah, I know.
It's a Riesling, of course, and it's for the VDP Versteigerung. So they produce it this especially for this, and it's the vintage 2018 that had been like impressing me pretty much. I like the way, or in general, I like their way of making wine. I like the style. I like this, like the coolness on the wines, like at least the strength and the energy that you can feel, and especially this wine that hit me pretty much.
I was there also last summer, and Caroline, if you're watching, I don't know if you're watching, I've already asked you if you want to be my next guest for next season, because Battenfeld Spanier, I think Culin Kilo, Battenfeld Spanier, it's a great winery, so they have some really interesting stuff. And the wine you're mentioning, I haven't tasted it yet, but I will take your word for it that it's a great wine, because they know how to make some good stuff there as well. And it's they're the neighbors basically from your area, right? So they have the same, partially they have the same vineyards, same areas where they produce as well.
Yeah, some of them, right? So Pettental, for example, one of our Pettental is next to one of their Pettental. So
cool.
Some which
nice.
pretty to each other. And yeah, even though Rheinhessen is pretty big, actually everything's quite near to each other.
It's still very centralized in certain areas, also around the river, obviously, but with the hills, etc., you're using this as well. For my next guest next week, I don't know if Jean is still online because he was watching. I saw Jean Belendrad for Belendrad's wines in Rueda in Spain. So we go to a very different area. What is a question that you would like to ask Jean, also being part of a family winery, making Verdejo mainly, but what will be your question for him?
Yeah, I saw that the winery is like not that old as ours. Like I have like around 25 years or so, and my question is like they might have had like their philosophy when they started, or when his father started, and I would like to know if he reached his goals. So if he like reached what the idea of why he wanted to have the winery, if he reached it, and if they changed anything in their philosophy, because climate change, of I don't know, customers or anything. So that's what I would like to know.
That's a good question. That's a good question. Thank you very much, Elisabeth. I think we answered almost every question. To be honest, for this episode, we had most questions. So you were very popular and you're very in demand. It was really nice to have you in the show. Enjoyed the wines and the Dienheim, but also the other ones. So for people that are watching, more reviews to come up. So stay tuned for that. And then hope to see you somewhere this year when Corona goes by. And I don't know if you have a final word to say, but I would like to thank you very much, at least for the show.
I wanted to just say the same. Thank you very much for inviting. It's a pleasure to be part of your show, and I hope you can come very soon and see all the vineyards live and.
Well, you have great pictures, so you already sold me with those.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. And my regards to the family, and of course, not to forget Hugo.
Hugo the hunter, yes.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Elisabeth. Bye-bye.
Bye.